For plebs, by plebs, dropping the Bitcoin-only signal. Pleb Underground. Welcome everyone to the Pleb Underground.
Welcome back to Pleb Underground. This is episode 115. Pleb Underground, we're weekly, feel daily. I need some sun, starting to feel a little paley. A new country adopted, it's thanks to David Baily. It's the one that made rugs even better than Welch Haley. Many Bitcoiners outcast, get mislabeled, but they got the plug running Bitcoin this fabled. They call themselves ATIQ gang, but they're not disabled. Practice makes perfect, like how I got disabled. They like my rhymes, they're weighted, I get the flow praise. Only one unduplicated, won't find me in the pro phase. Uncomplicated, get variation, even on the slow days. Not desiccated, no explanation, get juicy, dough bays. She asks if I'm alright, I'm like, okay, busy. We'll soon overtake Alphabet, ABC. There's 21 mil, you just need A, B, C. He might look young, but he's no baby, see? Bibliophile, she consumes reams and reams. Prolific writer too, an imagination that teems. She looks at me, eyes wide and smile beams. Take the city of dreamy spires and aspiring dreams. Detested by M haters, they need to hurt less. Tested MSTR betas, it ain't a cert bless. Best ed for maters, they're never short skirtless. Rest up couch potatoes, two girls taught shirtless.
Love the rhyme, Walton. Love the rhyme. Always find the clever wordplay. It's fantastic. All right, guys. Welcome back to another weekly episode of Pleb Underground. Joining us, all right, we've got a return guest. That's right. We've got Janine, who is a privacy researcher, and we've got...
Can't you see?
Huh?
I said, can't you see?
Can't you see? Yeah, seriously, both of the guests, right? And we have Lola, who is an independent journalist, and I'm going to say she's a fellow Bitcoiner. Both of them are fellow Bitcoiners. Thank you very much for joining us on Pleb Underground. It's absolutely awesome to have you on. I feel like this is going to be a show that either is going to scare people or, I don't know, maybe make them a little more curious about privacy and security and what's really going on around us.
Hopefully both. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely awesome. Okay, cool. We are going to move it over to the numbers.
Yeah, the numbers, of course, brought to us by Timechainstats and Timechain Calendar. And of course, Phil, this is the first week we're over 100K. I'm sorry I'm jumping in first, but like this is a big number. Does it matter? I don't know. I feel like what next, but what are the rest of the numbers look like this week, Phil? Tell us more, sir.
At the time of this recording, the block height is 873,536. The Bitcoin Fiat Exchange. It's you love to see it. You love to see it. Doesn't matter, but you love to see it. 101,761. I'm so glad that we get to record this episode back over 100K.
It was beautiful, right? Like,
it's too bad it didn't happen for Yellow Space
yesterday. I threw long spaces yesterday, and for the majority of it, it was over 100K. Yellow came in, we're like, yeah, congratulations on your freedom. And then later on, he does this show, and the whole time it's under 100K. It was beautifully poetic.
You really rug pulled Yellow in that speech that you gave, by the way, during his space. You really. Anyway,
they asked me. They asked for this.
It was so funny. You just reminded everyone that we weren't at 100K. Anyways, okay. All right. So here we go, guys. You're getting more Big Macs per Bitcoin. 19,751 Big Macs.
I had a thought about this the other day, right? Like Big Macs per Bitcoin is retarded because like anyone that really likes Big Macs, that like isn't buying a lot of Bitcoin, and anyone that's got a lot of Bitcoin isn't buying a lot of Big Macs. I feel like what we need to do is have statistics where, I don't know, it's showing, I don't know, things like maybe like luxury goods price. Like look, show like designer handbags priced in Bitcoin. And then like maybe you'll get some different, eyes paying attention. The people buying Big Macs in large numbers aren't going to be the ones pushing the Bitcoin price. So,
Okay, Ant, if you're watching this, you heard Walton?
We got to do some upgrades. We got to make Timechainstats sexy again. We'll do it.
Yeah. That's it. We're not appealing anymore. We're not appealing anymore to the left side of the curve with the Big Macs. We want to appeal to the mid curve and right curve. Okay,
this is what we want.
Yeah. Curves. Just give us anything. But yeah, I guess you're right. Luxury goods, maybe watches. Watches are pretty stupid. Okay. Anyways, total public Lightning capacity 5,249 BTC. It's interesting, as the Bitcoin Fiat Exchange goes up, there's just as much Bitcoin locked into Lightning as ever. So Maybe it's not dead. I'll always remind people it's not dead. Anyways, fastest fee, 14 sats per V-byte. Meh, reasonable. Crappy, but reasonable, I guess. Moscow time, what happened? 983. Holy crap. I can't wait for the day that we're like 1. That's going to be nuts. It is just going to be nuts. And that's right. We intend to be here for that day. We do. And guys,
I don't know who tweeted this, Phil, but someone said like we're always going to be in Moscow like AM time. We're never going back into PM time. And I like that, right? Was it Apex?
Apex Auto.
Apex.
Yeah.
KJ.
Good stuff. We appreciate that. You know, like I think that was a really wise post, and I had to retweet it myself. Hey, guests, what do you think about the numbers? Do you care? Does it matter? I feel like the privacy researchers and the people that pay attention to the bigger issues don't really give a shit about NGU.
It's a bit nippy.
So you're feeling it? Thinking we're frothy? Lola?
I mean, I've got to say, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of, how we got there. I think 100K Bitcoin is great, but the way that we've gotten there is really by betraying all of our principles, I feel like. So if Bitcoin is meant to be an alternative to the financial system, we really got here by sucking up to it, right? We've sucked up to the big banks. We've sucked up to government. What I find an interesting metric, I don't think you went over that, is that we're at 14 sats per V-byte. So I think that's something interesting to look at. Also, with being at 100K, right? Like, where's this price actually coming from if we have so much capacity on chain and blocks?
ETFs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So not impressed by 100K.
What are your thoughts? What are your, and this question is for both of you. What are your thoughts on the idea?
Obviously.
Yeah, exactly. What are your thoughts on the idea that this is part of the Trojan horse, right? That this is right, because I to your point, right? I do wrestle with that idea that, okay, like it seems as though, we gave in, and I've seen the meme, right, with the guy, with the girlfriend standing in front of Bitcoin and he's watching her, and that's the government, and so essentially watching the government take over Bitcoin, right? The cuck, so to speak. And I mean, is that really what happened? Is there any truth to the idea that this is part of the Trojan horse and we're just witnessing some insane form of 5D chess?
I think that this whole Trojan horse theory is something that, like, it's a nice story that, we've told us, but what we're really looking at here, I feel like, is that Bitcoin being incorporated into the nation state is going to come with so many new regulations, which I'm sure we can get into talking about other topics of the new administration that's come in. We have miners now talking about, how sanctions on Bitcoin are a good idea. We have a president that wants to make the US the mining capital of the world, which means that putting sanctions on chain on Bitcoin is actually going to be a feasible thing. So I don't believe in this whole Trojan horse theory. I feel like that we need to get away from telling ourselves these nice little stories that make us feel good, and start being a little more grounded in reality here. Because, what we're seeing is really the expansion of the US dollar, right? We're seeing this with Lightning Labs, right? Putting the dollar on Lightning. We're seeing this with Tether, Howard Lutnick now being head of the CD something, the Trade Commission. David Sacks, obviously, coming in, who's a big investor in Lightning Labs. So I think that Bitcoin, Mark Goodwin actually wrote a great book about this, the Bitcoin dollar. And I wrote a little snippet. Yeah, shout out to Mark Goodwin. He's like the Nostradamus of the Bitcoin dollar. And I wrote a little snippet on the back of it. And why I think that this book is so important is because Bitcoin has the potential not to replace the US dollar, but to really become the US dollar. And I think that's what we're seeing here and what a lot of people are just not aware of.
I think it's important to note that not all increase in attention about Bitcoin is about the success of Bitcoin. It can be about the success of other parties using Bitcoin for their own ends that isn't actually about furthering Bitcoin.
Definitely.
This is kind of a core part of it.
The question is also, how do you define the success of Bitcoin, right? The success of Bitcoin to me is having an alternative financial system that I can use and that maybe my friends in other countries can use. The success of Bitcoin for other people, maybe, having it at an arbitrary number like 100K. I think the success of Bitcoin in itself is already a very flawed metric.
It's going to be very tough to offer any hopium this episode.
I had an interesting conversation today with someone whose name I'm not going to disclose, but who talks to lots of important people, blah, blah. It wasn't Dennis Porter, of course, because that guy doesn't really. This guy talks to lots of important people and knows that there's lots of like these kind of secret Bitcoin whales out there that have got lots of money that are increasingly kind of getting involved in various funding efforts, and maybe these are more political rather than technical funding efforts. But he highlighted a concept of like what happens when half of the world's billionaires are billionaires because of Bitcoin. Like you have this group of people that are in a bunch of different countries all over the world that have some sort of unifying thing that other people don't have. That I believe understand kind of economics in a different way to people elsewhere. Like, well, how does that affect things if you really look at how the world is run? Like, essentially we're all cattle to billionaires, right? Like, to some degree, like there are
yes.
We're run by algorithms, like et cetera, right? And so what happens when essentially the people that have that sort of level of influence and control are Bitcoiners rather than fiat billionaires?
I've looking at my Twitter, like when I open my Twitter, the first thing since we've been at 100K, but also since Trump has been voted back into office, I always think of that scene from The Godfather where he says, "Look at how they've massacred my boy." So I don't really think that there's a difference between being a Bitcoin billionaire and being a fiat billionaire, to be honest.
This is to your point, Lola. It's like after you write like the king is dead, long live the king. It's pretty much that analogy, right? Like at some point you start off
power
as
corrupts,
right? Yeah, you start off as the hero, and then you get to that point where you get absolute power, and then absolute power corrupts absolutely, and then it's and then you're trying to
villain.
Right, exactly. That's the character arc, and I mean that's a problem, right? That's a people problem, right? That's humans, that's our incentives, that's the fact that we're, right now, I guess in our stage of consciousness, we're the term I'm looking for, we're predatory, to a certain extent, right? Like human beings are predatory in nature. So it's like, what else is going to happen, right? Unless we decide to change. So I think it doesn't make a difference, right? Whether we're Bitcoin billionaires or we're fiat billionaires, it's like the person's the person.
Whenever the price goes up like this, the problem you have with retail, which everybody brings up often, is that people don't understand that you can buy less than one Bitcoin because there are fractions of a Bitcoin. So people see this price and they think, oh, I can't afford that. And then they end up buying a bunch of other coins instead because they look, quote, cheaper. And so I think it's even more necessary to, like, if we want people who aren't already rich and in the establishment to be involved, then it needs to be better communicated that no, you don't have to have 100K to have Bitcoin.
I'm still yet to meet these like unit bias people. I'm not convinced they really exist. Like, do people really just not understand percentages, or is it that they think that like it's easier to make a bigger percentage increase on a smaller number? Is that what it is?
I think it's both. Probably more of the second. But the other thing is that, like, again, as you said, not much difference between a fiat billionaire and a Bitcoin billionaire, because most of them are holding their Bitcoin or their dollars or whatever currency in custodial exchanges, and that's also what retail is doing. When the price goes up, they're buying through exchanges and then holding on the exchanges because they don't know what to do after that. So nobody.
I think exchange balances
not
were
enough-
falling,
not
and
enough
then the ETFs
self-custody.
happened, and then it, really went the other way. Right now Coinbase has like 1 million, Bitcoin of retail and 1 million Bitcoin of ETFs or something. Like there's the Phil talked about kind of the numbers moving onshore back to the US. Essentially, the keys to a lot of Bitcoin being in the US. Like how does the strategic reserve fund get built exactly?
Well, if we look at history, the U.S. government doesn't actually purchase any Bitcoin; it just takes it. So I don't really see them doing anything different. I don't know how much I buy into the strategic reserve thing. I know that we've had this discussion on our live episode last time, a couple of weeks ago, and I know that some people were very hopeful that it's going to happen. Trump
hasn't like signed off on this, right? Like
No.
this is a Loomis's
A
bill,
lot of talk.
and that's all that's happened so far.
Yeah.
Watch the space,
Right, but I mean, I've looked at this bill, and I made a post about it a couple of weeks ago, and David Baily came to the rescue and pointed out that in the bill it actually specifically states that the bill would not utilize the confiscation of Bitcoin, but there's a very important word in there, and that is legally acquired Bitcoin. And so what Senator Loomis is actually doing on the sides that nobody's paying attention to because we're all, too happy with all of a sudden being rich, is that she's introduced the new bills that actually, according to their own press release, want to combat anonymous crypto transactions, right? Loomis has also, for example, co-sponsored bills for digital identities. And so what she's doing on one side is, yes, she's saying we will not confiscate legally held Bitcoin. But on the other side, she's also expanding what legally held Bitcoin actually means, right? And expanding that to a lot of, applying AML, CFT things. So not a fan again.
It sounds like they're destroying self-sovereignty with words.
I mean, yes, what a lot of people focus on, unfortunately, is the self-custody part, right? And I don't think self-custody will be ruled out. I know that Senator Loomis, for example, is a big fan of self-custody and says it will be protected. I think Trump has said as much as well. But what we're not looking at really is the AML and CFT compliance stuff, right? Where you have to do KYC, where worst case you have a self-custodial wallet, but your XPub is going to be shared with some government agency, or at least with the manufacturer of the wallet that you're holding. And so again, all of that, when you violate these things, that can all be used. So having peer-to-peer Bitcoin, having no KYC Bitcoin, possibly having Bitcoin that went through mixers, all of that can be used to actually build that strategic reserve.
Well, what's interesting to what you're saying is that there's also some of these exchanges, right? If you're going to send Bitcoin to them, right, that comes from from a hardware wallet, right, where you were taking custody, they demand to actually see records of where or how that Bitcoin was acquired. So, and we're talking about at the individual level, so let's say you're using something like River or Unchained or something like that. That type of a request is not unknown, unfortunately.
Yeah, although right now I think they're just doing that for their own compliance, but this
is correct.
It's actually being codified right now around the world. So in the EU, we already have this. It's called the travel rule, and the travel rule already exists for normal bank transfers and wire transfers, where when I would make a bank transaction to you, all of my personal information that's with my bank, so my government ID, right, where I live, all of the stuff, all of the KYC information I've given my bank is required to be forwarded then to your bank. And this is something that's now coming to Bitcoin and crypto in general as well.
So people using things like Peach Bitcoin, it's not very private.
It depends on how these type of exchanges are going to be regulated, and what exactly that regulation is going to look like in the end.
No, I mean, if you're doing a bank transfer, peer to peer, then you're saying the details get shared, so there is this kind of there is less privacy than there was, right? If you're saying these details weren't shared previously automatically.
Well, it applies to VASPs, which is virtual asset service providers, and I mean, there's been working groups that a number of so-called Bitcoin companies have participated in for a number of years, where there was a travel rule working group that was led by like Coinbase and a bunch of other like big companies, where they basically tried to propose their own data sharing solution for complying with the travel rule between each other in the United States, in Europe, and other countries. So yeah, they fully went for it. They didn't really resist it very hard.
Okay, I think we're gonna wrap up the numbers at this point, because you can see this conversation is definitely gonna continue on into the fireside chat. So yeah, that's gonna do it for the numbers. We are gonna move it over to the fireside chat, but before we do, a word from our sponsors.
It's like people only do things because they get paid. And that's just really sad.
Pleb Underground is brought to you by KnowHue. Go check them out at knowhue.com. They are building Amazon for Bitcoiners, a one-stop shop for Bitcoin-only brands. New brands are going to be added every month, so go check them out. Don't miss what's happening at knowhue.com. Pleb Underground is brought to you by CypherSafe. You guys all know I am a pet rock enjoyer. Love the swag, love the collectibles. This is the ultimate Bitcoin collectible. That's right, guys. We're talking 16 ounces of solid titanium, the Bitcoin Rolo Triangle. Go check it out at cyphersafe.io. Pleb Underground is brought to you by Thunderfunder. Go check them out at thunderfunder.com. Thunderfunder is a funding portal registered with the SEC and a member of FINRA. Their mission is to provide retail investors access to investments while supporting the growth of open source projects. They love Bitcoin. Check out their shitcoins. Thunderfunder.com. Welcome back, everyone. That's right. Fireside chat. We've got L0la and Janine, and we are just going to dive right into it. I want to continue talking about the kind of like switching gears a bit, but staying along the same track. I want to talk about the David Sacks stuff that I just mentioned before we started recording, and essentially, right, doing some digging into David Sacks. He was originally the CEO of Yammer, if anyone remembers that platform. Okay, that's how old I am, because I remember Yammer. I worked for a company that used it begrudgingly, and it was absolutely awful. A terrible product. But anyways, he's a pretty predominant member of Craft Ventures. And for the people who don't know who Craft Ventures is and who they've invested in, one of the companies that L0la mentioned before about essentially creating creating dollar derivatives is Lightning Labs. So yeah, Craft Ventures is an investor in Lightning Labs, in BitGo, in Coinbase, in Airbnb. They kind of have their tentacles all over the place, and some people even would suggest that they're kind of like one of those arms of the the Peter Thiel PayPal mafia. And at first I was very surprised that David Sacks was the one who was nominated Crypto Czar. I thought it was going to be Chris Giancarlo. I actually made a video clip about that because Chris testified to Congress during the great financial crisis about the Dodd-Frank Act. And I was just kind of surprised that it was David Sacks. But when I did more research, I realized this actually makes sense because of his particular connection and his role in the crypto space, I think, through Craft Ventures. So all of this to say, what do you guys think? What is really going to happen going forward? What are your thoughts? I guess we could start with L0la first, and then go to Janine. Like, where is this going? Right, the whole, because you could see, you could see it, right? Most of Trump's cabinets, a lot of them are Bitcoin hodlers, so to speak. A good percentage of them. So clearly, there's a game plan here.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, this is going straight to compliance coin. So David Sacks he's one of the biggest. Craft Ventures is one of the largest investors in Palantir, for example, which is a notorious surveillance company. But he's known for his investments in the crypto space, his investments in AI, but a lot of his investments also revolve around compliance. Right. So he's invested into B2B companies that claim to solve identity fraud, right? That claim to solve all of these fraudulent things that happen that companies need compliance for. And the answer to that in the end is always going to be surveillance, right? We need more surveillance to have the people be more safe. And so in my opinion, having David Sacks as nominated is it's a good thing if you just look at Bitcoin from like an exclusive investment perspective, right? But it's a very, very bad thing if you look at Bitcoin from the perspective of freedom money. There was last week a hearing in the House on all of the whole debanking debate that was going on. And the expert witnesses there actually testified, hey, one way to make to combat this debanking of crypto businesses, which happened because of the FTX collapse, because banks said, the politicians said this is just too risky for us to invest in. The proposed solutions for that are, again, things like digital identity, or one of my favorites, using AI for Know Your Customer. And so I think with David Sacks, this is the direction that we're going in. So yes, probably good for Bitcoin as an investment, very, very bad for Bitcoin as freedom money.
So this sounds like one of those scenarios where we're actually losing while we think we're winning.
I think what she's saying is that she doesn't think we should go all in on David Sacks. Like,
yeah, well, for us as I mean, as Bitcoin supporters, right? As Bitcoiners, like, it's not that difficult.
Podcast called the All In Podcast. That's the joke, Phil. That's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
I didn't realize that was the reference.
It's below my line, right? Is the point? So there's these group of Silicon Valley wankers, Chamath, Jason Calacanis, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
This guy and like a fourth guy. Like it's a bunch of billionaires that sit around talking about how they successfully insider trade on people. Like,
but doesn't Jason just cry about Bitcoin?
I mean,
like I've seen a few tweets recently.
They all seem to just cry about. I mean, yeah, different things, right? But like, yeah, Jason's been like, "No, we had Bitcoin since $100 and stuff," even though like he seemed to be hating on it for many years.
All right, we're gonna go back to the surveillance state, the surveillance state stuff. So did I watched the Joe Rogan podcast with Mark Andreessen, and I gotta say that a lot of that stuff was frightening but unsurprising, and so I guess to me it kind of looks though like we have no way to actually fight this. Like, because I mean, think about it, right? If Bitcoin is a tool for freedom, right, and it's slowly being captured because of number go up, right? And I know that captured is in quotations because we have to really define what capture means. And I think for us, it's some form of regulatory capture and social capture. I don't see it in any other way. But like, what are we really supposed to do? Besides continuing to expose that this is happening, right? Because people, like, in essence, right, like, it can't just be like one person that sits there and screams from the rooftops. At some point, it needs to become everybody's voice, doesn't it?
Yes, but the issue is, and I think this is something that the Trump administration has actually done fairly intelligently, is that we now live in a world where people believe that other people putting rainbow flags into their Twitter profile are a threat to their personal security, while they're electing the literal people that are so intertwined with the national security and surveillance complex that is the actual threat to their freedom and to their security, that you don't even know where to start explaining this stuff. And I think speaking to the whole like Mark Andreessen appearance on Joe Rogan, my initial thoughts on that were, wow, we're finally having this conversation on debanking, which is in the end something that affects, anyone. It mostly affects, immigrants, people of minority classes. But what he's managed to do in that podcast, and what the larger debate around this now has become, is that the crypto industry, right? How do we stop crypto businesses from being debanked. And so we went from an initial conversation of, you know, financial freedom, right? How do we build an equitable financial system where this stuff doesn't happen, to how do we make sure that the crypto industry remains privileged enough so that this doesn't happen to crypto businesses. There were a lot of other really scary things, by the way, that Mark Andreessen has said in that podcast, which I think Janine probably has a more educated take even on. So Mark Andreessen is very largely invested, for example, in the largest drone manufacturer for the US government, right? And so before talking about debanking, he told him that, you know, with AI, we can now go to war without any human risk. And what that tells us is that he does not consider people that are bombed by drones humans, right? Because to him, that just doesn't exist, right? And so these are the people that we've now put into our government, and thankfully we have something called the Constitution. And there has been a movement, which interestingly is actually mostly being pushed by the Zcash community, to reform or even abolish the Bank Secrecy Act, right? So we have the Constitution, which in general would provide us some reasonable form of financial privacy, but is being infringed upon by things like the Bank Secrecy Act and anti-money laundering laws. And so to your point, what can we do to protect us from this regulatory capture of Bitcoin, where we may have sanctions on the main chain, where we may have people that use mixers have their coins confiscated once they touch an exchange? Abolishing the Bank Secrecy Act is something that, you know, we can lobby for, that we should be able to do. There's very reasonable arguments to make on that also, that are not just we have a right to privacy, but that these AML systems actually don't work. So they have a success rate, I think, of 0.02%, which means that businesses are spending billions of dollars. The government is spending billions of dollars for a system that actually doesn't work. So we're not just infringing on people's privacy, but we're actually stifling innovation and competition with that as well, right?
Yes.
And so this is something where some of this debanking discussion was also touching upon, you know, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And so something to note there probably is that the person that's been appointed as the Senate caucus leader for the group that will interface with DOGE and Congress is a woman called Joni Ernst. Joni Ernst is a huge national security goon that has spent the past years lobbying to get rid of end-to-end encryption, right? So there are things that we can do, which is to lobby for the Bank Secrecy Act, for example, to be abolished because it doesn't work. But I don't think that this is the right government, that this is the government that will do so.
That's a whole bunch of stuff I was not aware of. So I really appreciate you explaining that.
I'm just going to reshare this photo that I shared in the middle there, but didn't want to interrupt Lola on her flow. This is the new mafia running things of the tech elite. Here you see
yeah, Mark calls them the Freemasons.
Teal, right?
I saw that.
The Freemasons, right. This is Peter Thiel, right? The leader of Palantir, etc. And the kind of tech surveillance state.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm conflicted about when I listen to people like Mark Andreessen, because as you know, he started A16Z. A16Z is just a giant factory of vaporware and complete nonsense. And it's just interesting because he has such a deep understanding of how, or so it seems, right, that he has such a deep understanding of how broken things are and essentially what direction they're moving in. And yet, A16Z. So I don't know. I get confused.
It's a curious thing, right? I mean, one of the interesting things that Andreessen said on Joe Rogan was that the CFPB was in charge of debanking people which is just absolutely not
Yeah.
true, right? It actually protects consumers. I mean, it's not great, right? They do dumb shit too. But they're actually an agency that you can go to when you have been debanked, and they will try to help you. So the interesting thing here is that one of Mark Andreessen's portfolio companies was actually shut down by the CFPB. And so getting rid of the CFPB, with Mark Andreessen being invested so deeply into things like, payday lending and all this stuff, is actually going to be very profitable for him. So yeah.
All right, we're gonna switch gears away from that dystopia, okay, and we're gonna switch gears to the article that Janine had posted for us. Essentially, what it has to do with, and hold on a second, let me pull this up so people can see what I'm talking about here. Okay, so, and this is just a screenshot, and I know that Janine's looking for sources on this, but it does raise some very interesting questions and points. But here we go. Loud arrest in Moscow. A robot drug carrier fell into the hands of law enforcement officers. Okay, so essentially,
this is badass, this thing.
I mean, so look, this kind of goes back to the whole, the Bitcoin, right? The Bitcoin narrative, or just
the
narrative.
It destroyed its own data, Phil. When it got
crazy?
caught? It's like it deleted deleted the geo data that I guess it collects by moving around, but it had apparently all the drugs on it and like a number to call, yeah.
I mean, look, it's interesting because society, or at least mainstream media, tries to frame criminals as kind of being stupid and stuff like that. And it's interesting because they're usually using the technology before the, general law enforcement are aware of how that technology can be used in criminal ways, right? And we've seen this with the internet, we've seen this with the pager, cell phones, etc. We all know these stories. So, Janine, my question to you is this: is there any confirmation on this story? Because I know you were looking for other sources. Is this real? Is that it? Have we reached the point of the portable drug dog, the portable drug market dog that just comes around and offers you?
Yeah, I didn't find any other articles that talked about this exact seizure, but I, in general, found stuff about how robotic dog couriers are being used increasingly in major population centers in Russia, like Moscow. There's even apparently a collaboration, according to Reuters, between Russia Post, which I assume is the main national post service, and Yandex using robot dogs for delivery. So it's not completely outlandish that people delivering drugs would also use similar technology. But yeah, for me, the most interesting things about the story was that, the robot, once it had been essentially detained by the police, it went into, quote, self-defense mode, and then it started deleting its own routing data, so probably then they couldn't figure out where it came from. And that's kind of sophisticated. And that's why the person who shared the screenshot, I don't know where the screenshot is from. That's why I wanted to look for a source. But the person who shared the screenshot of this story, it said, this is not the cyberpunk we expected. And it's like, what are you talking about? This is definitely a cyberpunk thing we expected. It's similar things have been written about. A lot of the early cyberpunk literature was around how do you pay for drugs? How do you move drugs? How do you deal with addiction in a highly technological society with a lot of surveillance? So that doesn't surprise me at all. But it also doesn't surprise me that these robot dogs are sophisticated enough to go walking around doing this. And actually, besides carrying the drugs themselves, they were actually advertising darknet marketplaces too. And these robot dogs, have, according to that article, had been observed before doing that. And it kind of reminded me of a story that I read many, many years ago about how there are feral dogs roaming around Moscow, and they're smart enough to use the urban train system. They will get on and off at metro stations if they know that certain stops have more food or people who will feed them. And so, yeah, it's a very interesting story to me.
So this brings up the inevitable question that kind of goes back to what Lola was talking about earlier about KYC AML, right? This is, at some point, is this not going to necessitate some type of regulation to keep people safe, right? Can't have dogs going around offering these services, right? You can't have robots going around doing this. So kind of starts making you think of the dystopian type of tracking for robots. Like, I mean, obviously, I would just assume that a person who purchases a robot would be able to track their robot, but this kind of brings into the equation the government tracking your robot while it's right in your home or doing whatever errands that you're having it do, such as deliver drugs or advertise darknet markets, right? I mean, what else are they supposed to do? Like, I feel like this immediately goes into KYC AML for robotics.
I mean, Cody Wilson, once, to paraphrase him, once said that crime is a necessary byproduct of a free society. And John Perry Barlow said a similar thing in his Declaration of Independence of the Internet, is that you cannot separate the air that breathes from the air upon which wings beat, right? And so, yes, any of this technology is going to be used by criminals. And I think that this new administration is going to surveil the shit out of all of us.
I can't wait. I mean, obviously it's going to kind of suck, but at the same time, I'm very curious as to the story, because I'm a fan of storytelling, right? I'm a fan of being told stories. So it's like, what story?
I've got the next part of the story, Phil.
Oh, okay, tell me.
Really, it sucks.
Go.
I don't know if it should come now or on REKT, but this is.
No, it should come on REKT, unless you want to explain it now. It's up to you.
Sure. Why don't we just talk about one way in which privacy is getting wrecked? Just with a little story from friend of the show. I think maybe was it with the first friend of the show, one of the first very first friends of the show, Hodlanor.
Oh yeah.
Who shares that, like, in socialist Norway, everyone's tax returns are public. They just got published. Norwegian media proceeds to publish an article about the wealth and income of people owning Bitcoin and or crypto, complete with lists, full names, birth year, etc. Complete insane, putting a target on the back of all these people, and he's blanked it out. But like they're showing like the wealth of people and their names, right?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
yeah, we're really turning this whole thing around of, transparency for the government and privacy for the people is really being turned on its head right now.
It seems like the government is setting up the purge to be against Bitcoiners, and that's not cool. Like,
I mean, have you read Peter Thiel's comments on how he believes the government should be run, that entrepreneurs have proven to be of a higher class of intelligence than other people, and that's why they're more suitable to do that? That's straight out of Mussolini's corporatism. That's like literally...
See, I would say Peter Thiel can suck my dick, but he pretty liked that. So, like, I'm not going to say that.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's you definitely don't want these guys quoting Mussolini and shit like that, But I mean, has it not always been fascism? Isn't it?
Hey, look,
he was a fascist,
made some
wasn't
pretty
he?
cool outfits, right? Like the uniforms of fascism, the fashion of fascism.
Fashionism.
No, but like I don't know. You see this? God. So many fucking Bitcoiners on Twitter are fascists, Phil. Like they all want to have their own little like citadel, where they think they're going to be like sitting on a throne, and a bunch of shitcoiners are going to be like groveling for a couple of sats to like clean toilets. Like you guys aren't getting your own mandrakes. That's not happening. Like I'm sorry.
I can't disagree with that. I think that's also fucking delusion. I appreciate the delusion. Don't get me wrong. I'm totally fine holding incompatible thoughts at the same time, but I also know that that's just nonsense. So, it's good stuff. All right, I think this is going to wrap up the fireside chat, and we are going to move it on over to REKT.
Welcome back to REKT, where we have capitulation for you this week from none other than the Financial Times. Isn't this a blessing, right? The Financial Times has perhaps been one of the the most retarded critics. Am I allowed to say that? I don't care. Most
Yeah, you
retarded
are.
critics of Bitcoin in history. Like, they double down, they triple down. They're like, yeah, we don't care. We think you're all wrong, and they belittle us and they insult us, and they're wrong. And finally, they've now issued an apology to hodlers, and I'm gonna read from it. Regular readers of FT Alphaville may have formed the impression that its current and former writers are united in skepticism about crypto in general and Bitcoin in particular. This is correct. FTAV posts between June 2011 and today may have communicated the idea that Bitcoin is a negative sum game being played on a protocol that's very clever and hypothetically useful as a unit of count, but is chronically inefficient as a conventional means of exchange and is compromised as a store of value. Our posts may have also promoted the idea that the price of Bitcoin is an arbitrary hype gauge that is disconnected from any utility the token may have because it's trivial to duplicate the utility provided by said token, so any intrinsic worth comes from the sunk costs of infrastructure alongside intangibles like regulatory acquiescence, interconnectedness with mainstream financial systems it was once sold as being the antidote to, and the souvenir attraction of being the first. As always, the Financial Times, the leader of sophistry in financial journalism, they continue with, "We stand by every single one of those posts." Retards. All right, they say, nevertheless, with Bitcoin's price recently crossing $100,000, a significant number of commenters seem to feel they deserve an apology in light of our long-standing cynicism. So here it is. We're sorry if at any moment in the past 14 years you chose, based on our coverage, not to buy a thing whose number has gone up. It's nice when your number goes up, and we're sorry if you misunderstood our crypto cynicism to be a declaration of support for TradFi, because we hate that too.
All I heard was salt.
Right. Right, and then, I mean, I think we're all here because Bitcoin isn't as successful as the fax machine, right?
Yeah.
But it is a machine of truth. I call it the fax machine, right? So this guy is now stepping down. Finally, Mr. Paul Krugman.
Oh.
After 25 years. At the Times, an unrelated publication. Nonetheless, journalism against Bitcoin, is it defeated?
Is what defeated?
These like mainstream,
No.
like TradFi journalists, have they all gone, yeah, Bitcoin's fine now?
Nope. No, they
everyone's like, oh yeah, we got the Trump pump, we got the Putin high strike, everyone's winning, right? And
So I do actually, since you mentioned the Financial Times, I do want to bring up somebody who has come around, who used to be at the Financial Times, and if you're a Bitcoiner no, if you've been a Bitcoiner for quite a while, you may remember the name Isabella Kaminska, and you may still even hate her to this day. But actually, if you go and look at her work now, it's actually very good. She's doing a lot of good investigations and reporting about like financial privacy, financial surveillance, and so she's someone who's come around to Bitcoin. I don't know exactly when, but definitely in the last several years, and she's doing great work. And she used to write for the Financial Times. She was known as one of the major Financial Times writers that Bitcoiners often didn't like because they didn't like her articles. But she's done actually really good work that is, I would say, good for Bitcoin. No, I did not say Jemima. I said Isabella,
oh, okay,
and I will stick with Isabella.
No, that's fine, because there is some like Jemima or something that works for the Financial Times, and I think she's pretty. I'd be impressed if she flipped. But anyway, it's yeah, gradually and suddenly.
Yeah, Isabella does great work. If you're interested in financial privacy, she investigates also a lot of like the AML CFT stuff. So I would recommend to follow her as well.
She has an outlet called The Blind Spot now, and I actually think that's a very good name because I think part of the reason why it takes so long or journalists never come around to things, even if like, or at least they never publicly come around, even if maybe they do privately, is because journalists are very bad at admitting mistakes, like across the board. That's why you get a letter like this from the Financial Times, where they're kind of saying it's a non-apology.
He's wrong?
They're not apologizing.
Yeah, it's a
That
non-apology.
that is a passive aggressive
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like, especially if you know, like, you've done it yourself, you know what that sounds like. That is pure passive aggression. It's the same type of thing I would say when I'm like, I'm not sorry, but I'm going to apologize. That's really what it is.
I mean, most of the journalism industry is based around censoring your mistakes, hiding your mistakes, retracting them without acknowledging them. I mean, there is some standard for issuing corrections, but those are kind of a rarity. Most of the time, stuff just gets changed and removed, and you never know about it.
Tiny little print, like on page 473. Like,
Why?
You know, it's not like it's on the front page. Like, if there's a front page claim, the retraction doesn't happen on the front page, right? The retraction is always.
Yeah, even when it has consequences, like there have been articles written where entire congressional hearings have been had about the content of the article and about how crypto, Bitcoin, whatever is, needs more regulation because look at all the crime happening. And it turns out, they secretly edited the numbers later because they actually weren't justified or real in any way. And yet we have a congressional hearing that has consequences for real people and the law, and they don't try to fix that.
So why?
It's like that Wall Street Journal article about Hamas financing that's still online. Even though there was a congressional hearing. They've said it's nonsense. Who did correct themselves, though, is Elliptic. They quietly went around and edited their own blog post on Hamas financing and edited the graphic and then said the journalists misinterpreted their numbers. So that
is par for the course.
This is why I call journalists to be part of this trifecta of evil, along with lawyers and politicians, because they have misaligned incentives when it comes to truth, right? Essentially, they only care about the law, essentially, right? They're not doing what's right. Like, if you look at the moral stages of development, right? They're not getting up to kind of ethics-based morality. They're just avoiding punishment and being praised for. That's it. Like, they're not really purveyors of truth like they claim to be.
Why do you think? And this question is, for L0la or Janine. Why do you think that is about the journalists not being able to gracefully? Apologize. Really? Money? It's like, damn, I feel like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like a sucker, it's like for believing that like somebody would just, want to do the right thing because it is the right thing to do. And that is correct. It doesn't matter if it means less, money, or it means some type of loss of credibility with people that don't understand the truth. I don't know. I feel like a sucker. Anyways.
I think it's a very human thing, though, right? That like you don't want to make a mistake and have like the entire internet know about it.
Oh, that's a perfect segue. That's a perfect segue to the next bit.
Okay.
All right. So
just stop right there.
Oh wait, go on. Finish it. Go on then.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I have like in my bio, I have like for corrections, right? I have like an email where people can email me in case I do get something wrong, because we are all humans and we all make mistakes. What I do think is harder for people to track, and where a lot of this hate against journalism in general comes from, is that you're not really able to track what the incentives are, right? So if you look at something like Pirate Wires, for example, right? Pirate Wires has had it's by Mike Solana, very close to Peter Thiel, Palantir, again, that entire segment. They've had stellar coverage of the Trump administration, right? And if you don't know these things, you would take this stuff as fact, right? Because you don't know that these guys are actually friends and, they're probably helping each other out behind the scenes. So yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that journalism gets so demonized.
Very interesting.
So
I mean, there's also some responsibility on readers too. I mean, the stuff that people are very short-term attention spans these days, and they won't put in the time to reading an entire thorough investigation and going through the documents. I mean, I do, because I actually like seeing the source documents, and whenever I do my own things, I try to publish as much of that as possible. But readers are attracted to things that get their emotions going and are short and to the point and not complicated. Not everybody, but the majority of people don't have the time to deal with serious stuff in depth. And they often only fund things that aren't in depth, and maybe don't challenge their opinions. That's also a problem, is that journalists are very scared of having views, having opinions in their pieces that might be counter to or challenge their readers. And if you don't have a reader base that is willing to be challenged and maybe say, oh, I'm not sure if I believe that, but I'll look into it anyway, then you don't want to publish things that maybe are true, but would make your audience turn away from you. So
I think some of it's about how they think, right? Like a lot of journalists haven't kind of become journalists because they were strong kind of scientific thinkers. And I think if you like the best journalism, you could argue, is the scientific process. Essentially, you're receiving new information and then presenting a model based on that new information plus what you had before. And I just don't think that's the kind of thinking that many journalists do. But yeah. Lola referenced that, you know, you shouldn't do something, you know, I don't think this is quite the wording, but you shouldn't do something retarded because on the internet, because everyone will see. And so we go to the shitcoin section of REKT this week, where apparently there are people that have the unit bias that I don't really believe exists. We're going to hear from Uncle Danny here. Uncle Danny messaging, I believe, a Bitcoiner, saying, "You need to get XRP right now. It's going to $1,000. And he says, lol, that's literally not possible. He's like, well, people used to think that about Bitcoin. Now it's at $100,000. Surely XRP can be worth just 1% of Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, good point. That's interesting. I have a lot to think about now. And so I thought, well, let's do some research on this, right? Where's Uncle Danny gone wrong, right? Well, is it possible that like XRP as a market cap could be worth 1% of Bitcoin? Maybe, you know, there are shitcoins worth more than 1% of Bitcoin. I think XRP is one of those at this point, maybe. But for it to get to $1,000, well, let's have a look at what the supply is.
Can't do that.
Apparently, it's 100 billion. I apologize for the heavy light mode here. Coin market cap, fuck you. All right, so 100 billion times 1,000. Can someone do the math for me? Carry the one. That's what, 100 trillion? So what you're saying is that like a quarter of the world's wealth is gonna be stored in XRP. Yeah, I'm not buying it, bro. It's not happening.
It did go up, though, didn't it? It did go up, and
did go up.
The point. And why does it go up? It goes up because of the story, right? And so, like, we've got to hear a tweet here from Guat that says, "I asked a Ripple holder why I should invest in XRP, and they said, imagine being able to invest in Swift." To which I said, "Okay, but why would I want to invest in Swift?" And they said, "Do you know how Swift works?" And I said, "No." "Do you know how Swift works?" And they said, "No."
And that's why they buy XRP.
It's just
that tweet just won. That tweet won.
It was spot on. It is. It's just like, that's the level of depth. They're just like, yeah. Have you heard of this buzzword? Like, all shitcoins and meme coins. I think that's what it comes down to, right?
All they talk, it's so funny with the Swift and the ISO 20022 and all this crap and back and forth. It's funny because they memorize these lines, right? The XRP army, they memorize these lines, but none of them actually go and do any research about the words that they've memorized. It's like, you need to take the next step. And for some reason also, this I also find really helps with the illusion. Never do the math. Right? Like, just look at the number of what the price could be. Never actually figure out that the number makes no sense and is most likely not just improbable, but almost impossible. So, yeah, it's going to get ugly for the Ripplers. It's going to get ugly for them.
There was a woman who went named Carol. I don't remember her last name, but Carol went on the BBC. Whatever the morning was after Bitcoin went to 100K, and she spent most of the segment talking about how Ethereum is more sophisticated, and the reason Bitcoin went to 100K is because it was first, and it was the test one, but Ethereum is the real one because the way it gets his price is just more sophisticated. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
She's a, if I'm not mistaken, she's a risk expert. She's a crypto and risk expert. And that's all I need to see. Oh, God. We're going to see, like, we know this is bull market vibes. Walton, you're muted.
I think crypto people are risk experts, actually. They're not risk reward experts. They are risk experts. They just go, look, I'm going to go like 150x like long on like on like, I don't know, the money I just got from selling my mum's car, and then hopefully I can, buy myself a house on a Lambo and replace it before she notices. Like, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. But like, who is gonna create the next rug, right? Well, of course, this week we had a beautifully lubricated rug by an expert in that sort of thing. Of course, it's Tuah. All right, so some guy here, my $35,000 that I purchased of Hawk is now $2,000 after 10 minutes of buying. I am a huge fan of Tuah, but you took my life savings. I purchased your coin Hawk that you were so excited about with my life savings and children's college education fund as well. You didn't mention that you were going to buy 97% of the ply and sell it almost immediately to make a large profit. If I had known that information, I would have not purchased your coin, blah, 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 whatever. Like, I don't know if this is a true story, but the point is this coin did get rugged, and a bunch of people did lose money. But the story seems believable because it's like this seems like the average crypto bro. It's like, they have like real responsibilities. Like, apparently, like, they have children, right? And they're I mean, saving, I don't know what they were saving in for their children's college education fund, but like to then be like buying a token based on a girl that got famous from the onomatopoeia of blowjobs, like it's an interesting move. And I know you're a huge fan of CoffeeZilla, Phil. A clip from CoffeeZilla, who, along with, I don't know, like Zach XBT, I don't know how, like, they seem to bust more like crypto scams than anyone I've ever heard of. And I think there's it's quite a revelatory clip. I'm not gonna spoil it, but I do think you get some insight into just the typical kind of level of thinking of people that are creating these projects. And maybe, if you're out there considering, like, taking a spin on some random thing, like, you can see about how little they've really thought things through. Here we go.
This is one of the most miserable, horrible launches I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, then why the fuck are you on?
I've been tracing it on chain for a while. You guys generated over $1 million in fees while y'all's fans got rug pulled. There was snipers, but there was also insider trading directly linked to y'all's creator account. What are you guys doing?
No. That's not true. That is true.
That's a fact.
No, it's not.
Well, it's a fact, and you can see it on chain. So
yeah, we know. We trust me. We were there. We could answer that.
You know about the insider trading?
No, there's no insider trading. That's why we can answer it.
Okay, so there's tokens going directly from the main account.
CoffeeZilla, just chill for a second.
And then it's getting sold for $50K. Who is that?
Definitely not us. You think we're doing this for $50K? Yeah, fucking right. Talking to the wrong guy. You're used to these bullshit scammers out here. Not us. Now, we had...
That's what everyone says, by the way.
I like how low-key just admits. He's like, no, we're not doing it for $50K. Clearly, we're doing it for more. I'm going to continue.
There was a strategic allocation, right, through a foundation. Every single one of those was signed through a SAFT. The deployer wallet, you've heard of a strategic allocation or a private
How much
sale.
did y'all get doing a pre-sale? How much did y'all make?
It's not that
Selling
we
out
made.
your fans So
over here, can you give hold on, CoffeeZilla, take a chill pill, brother.
So y'all just rug pulled a bunch of people.
No, there's no rug. We're here every single day. There's no rug pulled, and it's not done by us. Yes, snipers sniped it up to an insane market cap.
No, it's not just snipers.
That was not us. That was
listen. You know that.
Listen, no. I'm telling you the truth.
And y'all made millions on fees from this little scheme.
There's not a.
I'm sure that's not you getting those fees, right? Who's making the money on the fees? Who's making millions of dollars on fees from this rug pull?
That's not a scheme. That's the project. So we can keep this thing going for years. Okay. That's how do you think? There's so many expenses.
Who makes the money on the fees? Someone just made over $1 million on fees. Who made it?
First of all, the fees were there with Meteora pools, and that goes to the creator, right?
Who does that who does that belong to?
That belongs to the project, right?
Who's the project? Who is the project?
Well, the project is over here, Haley Welch, right? And
how much does Haley Welch own?
This is Haley Welch's project.
So she owns all of it.
CoffeeZilla.
Did she just make $1 million on fees on a rug pull?
Do you know how much it costs for lawyer fees to create a foundation in the Cayman Islands, to hire directors? You think this stuff pays for itself, right?
So y'all wanted to make the money on day one? I don't understand. I'm just asking.
We're here every single day.
Billions of dollars in fees from the rug.
Day 2, day 3. You know, this is how you run a project forever. Is you have to fund that.
Yeah, I think we can stop it there, right? It's like he's like, yeah, we did, we got to pay for the lawyers, so we don't get sued. Like she's like,
how many cell phones?
These people.
How many cell phones?
We're not even halfway through at this point. Like, yeah.
I mean, are you kidding? Hey, so that wasn't us, right? The rug pullers, like that wasn't us. That was somebody else. It's like, dude, you understand what you've done too well, and you can't help but continue to just stick your foot in your mouth. That is ridiculous. It was like nonsense.
He was reading a lawyered statement, right? Like he's reading specific terms or something like this. Yeah. Of course, because that's what they're spending the money on, right? The lawyers.
I thought it was funny because he actually didn't even really deny, and what he actually said was that like, no, we're going to be doing this for a long time. Okay, so you're rug pulling this fucking this thing for a really long time.
It's a really slow rug pull.
It's slow one. Oh man, that makes it legit, right? That makes it legit. But they actually made a shitload of money.
Man.
Huh? Oh yeah, that's right. They have a foundation. Oh my god, that was so embarrassing.
That recording also afterwards.
Yep.
There's good indicators in that like the guy, it's slippery slope kind of like excuses, right? Is where like initially they deny that, and then they come back. CoffeeZilla came back with more, and so then he kind of makes a kind of side move on that, but then denies the next one. Then CoffeeZilla comes back, and then he acknowledges the first one, but then do you know what I mean? So it's like.
Yep. It's just pushing the goalpost because he has no choice because they're lying, right? And they're busted, so they have no choice but to move the goalpost slowly and hope that nobody notices.
But the person that's wrecked
so
is the person that in Spaces yesterday told me that they put money on Haley Welch going to prison in 2024. Like, come on, Bitcoiners, stop betting on stupid shit. Seriously. Please.
I'm not going to jail for this. What are you kidding me?
No, well, she might do, but she's not going.
Well, not now.
The case isn't going to get seen in the next 3 weeks or something, Phil. Is it like?
Of course not.
Just. Yeah. That's it, pretty much. Yeah. I guess wrecked everyone. All the X's that text people when it flipped to 100K. And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that.
All the haters. Yeah. Have fun staying poor.
Sweet. All right. That's going to wrap up REKT. And we are going to move it on over to the Hopium.
The Hopium.
I mean, I don't really think I have to talk about Bitcoin going over 100K for the Hopium, but like, yeah, obviously it's wonderful. But David Baily, hard at work or hardly working. You decide. Here we go. In the Middle East, next 2 weeks, shilling Bitcoin harder than I've ever shilled before. And David, good job here with the get up. Very very chic-y. I like that. Chic Baily. Very nice. Any quick thoughts on
Bitcoin
this,
to the
guys?
moon, max bidding.
Hey, is that what's happening? Max bidding? We're going to 1 million? Okay, anyways.
I mean, he's meeting with some pretty senior people, including I believe heads of state in the Middle East, to try and pitch them on Bitcoin. Now, is he going to be successful? I don't know, but is he getting in the door? I believe so. So
he is in the door.
And I know you might think David Baily talks a lot of nonsense, but he does have some smarter people writing stuff for him that that prepare him for these sorts of things. So yeah. Maybe
let's see how this goes.
I'm not sure about this messenger, but you guys know the message is good. So like, how bad can he fuck it up is the question. We shall see.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got one yes. I'm gonna say yes too.
It's a very American thing to like. Oh God, this is so cringe. For me, like, first of all, he's saying I'm in the Middle East. It's like, yeah, that's a large region. Where can you like name the country, bro?
He's deliberately not naming it. Like, I know which country it is, but
I know which country it is, and he doesn't need to tell me. Because it's like, yeah. It's just gross.
No, I don't think it's the one you think it is then, actually.
And nobody is saying what they think. Okay, fine. You know what, guys? We'll see what happens. Moving on, David Baily. I think, dude, you did this better than I could. I'll tell you that much. Yeah. Well done.
Did you see the shoes, though?
Yeah. Not going to lie, not a fan, but it's okay. Under the circumstances.
This is the American fashion, Phil, is that no matter what you're wearing, you wear like formal dress and sneakers.
Of course.
Just like, that's how you identify as American, You
never know when you're going to have to run.
You spend decades, bombing the region into oblivion, taking their money, killing their citizens, so much devastation, and then you send your emissaries to be like, look, we can like save you now with this freedom money, and we're going to do it by electing this president who's going to be great for Bitcoin. It's like it's such a bubble world these people live in, that they think that this is how you help people. It's like I find it really disgusting.
I mean, in all fairness,
how you pump the price, right?
It's how you pump the price and how you deliver world-class freedom. This is what it is, right? The ends justify, what is it? The ends justify the means justify the ends. Anyways, I don't believe that, of course, but that's what people tell themselves, right? That's how you can get away with the net positive argument, right? Just wash it over with the net positive argument. Anyways, some actual
imperialist thinking, by the way, there that Janine just touched upon.
Mm-hmm.
Not to compare anyone to any other imperialists that have.
Is what Dorsey's doing in Africa similar?
No, I think that's different, because I feel what he's doing is he's actually teaching people how to build stuff themselves. It's not this, hello, here I am, I'm presenting the solution to help you guys, right? It's more like, he's building all of these developer funds and trusts, teaching people how to develop this. Is that not some of that just like culturally and like economic driven? Because the Middle East have a lot of money, and they often value convenience. So like there is an aspect probably here where they'd rather buy some like solution rather than that sort of thing. But I do think that I agree with your comment that there are differences in how they're doing it.
Mm.
Well, this isn't going to appeal to the average person in, quote, the Middle East, because a lot of them, not only some of them didn't even elect their heads of state, and the ones who did still hate them. So it's like you're by just doing this, you're marking yourself out as someone who is part of the establishment. Like, you're helping the wrong people. Like Saudi Arabia, for instance, do you know how many people have died building their stupid fucking like surveillance megacities? These people, this crowd, and even more so in the Ethereum space, like they're
it's not
dictator adjacent.
Yep.
Like, what you're saying about Saudi is true, but David Baily is the country that he's orange pilling is not Saudi.
I didn't say it was.
We're moving on. We're going to better things. That was supposed to be Hopium. Going on to better things. This is actually some Hopium. That's right.
The price is going to jump next week, though, like, based on that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, obviously. But here, this is some real Hopium. This is some good stuff here. This is a tweet from Ross Ulbrict, right? For the past year or so, he's been running a Civilization-style game for my fellow prisoners. I am now handing it off to one of my good friends so he can run it after I'm gone. So, guys, is the writing on the wall? Is he finally going to get out? Is there going to be justice, right, for Ross? And his sentence gets commuted so that way he can never be prosecuted for this bullshit again. What do you guys think? Hey?
I think even if he gets released, that won't be justice, because the fact that he's had to be in prison for this long and that his imprisonment is dependent on one or the other head of state being elected as the way that justice is delivered is already a travesty.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to wait for a new president.
Nailed
How do you undo time theft, right? Like you can't give people back the time you stole from them.
Also, when are we going to prosecute all the people in the U.S. government who are part of his prosecution and hid evidence or maybe didn't testify when they should have testified about how his investigation was corrupt?
Absolutely right. The fact that it was FBI agents that were actually ordering these, the murders and stuff like that. So very interesting stuff. But I totally agree with you. I think that is a fantastic take, Janine. There is no justice in that sense. But I guess all we can do is kind of be happy about the fact that he can get out and, I guess, hard swallow the everything else around it, right? Because it's not right and it doesn't make sense, and it's just unfortunate that people in power, think that this is the right way to do things, So,
and it's anyways. Like some people have this like inclination to clap on the back whichever the head of state is that ends up freeing him, and it's like, I don't reward people for doing the minimum human decent thing. Like that's the minimum requirement you should have, is to not hurt other people, not steal people's lives. So I'm not going to give anybody a reward for that. It's like, you should just fucking do it.
Yeah. Nailed it. Okay. Moving on, guys. Moving on. We are going to, that's right, Czech Republic. Look at this. They're going to have no capital gains tax on Bitcoin.
Have you seen this guy's title in the top corner? It says Bitcoin Chief of Propaganda. So I don't know if we can trust this message necessarily, but...
Well, you know what, though? He's chief, in all fairness, he's at Brains Mining. So, I mean, it kind of sounds good. Czech Republic. Or not. Yeah, they are in the Czech Republic, but still. Here.
Bitcoin capital of Europe, where Parliament just passed incredible new laws for Bitcoiners.
A lot has changed. So let's recap the new legislation. First, Bitcoin is now taxed the same as stocks. So there is no capital gains tax if you hold it for at least 3 years. Second, local Bitcoin businesses have the right to a bank account. Banks can no longer discriminate against them by closing their accounts for no reason. Lastly, there is legal clarity on MiCA regulation, which is a new vast EU-wide crypto regulation. And then there is the Bitcoin capital itself, the home to many key Bitcoin inventions. The world's first mining pool, the world's first hardware wallet, both Stratum mining protocols, the world's leading Bitcoin ATM producer, Bitcoin-backed lending platform, the biggest merchant adoption in the world, and much more.
Prague's future looks bright, so my mission now takes me to the US, where I'll be working on a documentary to showcase the value of Bitcoin mining. So follow me not to miss it. Cheers.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, so yeah, that's good stuff. I think I could appreciate that stuff. The same type of laws as stocks. I can appreciate that. It's good stuff. I don't have really anything to say against it, to kind of bring it back down to reality. I mean, obviously legislation is legislation, and Red tape is red tape. So
but
yeah,
some European countries are going
Gotta
the
take
opposite
those
way
wins.
right now. Some
Yeah,
European
that's right.
countries are going the opposite way, right? Like
Exactly.
the UK is about to increase corporation tax. They're talking about introducing an exit tax for the first time. I believe other European countries have talked about doing an exit tax for the first time too. The game theory of jurisdictional arbitrage is beginning. But are we all going to get trapped?
That's how, man, this is what happens. You lull people, right? You lull them into just being quiet and calm and relaxed, and slowly but surely kind of just keep pushing the goalposts down the line. It's what I've called before, goose stepping. That's what it is, slowly but surely they get you to the finish line where they want you. But okay. The last Hopium article, right, guys? We talked at great length about David Sacks being and I didn't realize he was the AI in CryptoZar. I thought he was just the CryptoZar. But what is he? The CEO of Kraken? Is he? No, he's the co-founder of Kraken. That's right, Jesse Powell.
He was formerly CEO, Phil.
He was.
He's essentially retired, right? To be chairman.
That kind of makes sense, right? That kind of makes sense.
A common move.
So thank you, Lola, for sharing this with us. But Jesse Powell said unfathomably bullish on the announcement of David Sacks. Now, we were talking about this before in the Fireside chat, and so Janine, I believe you had some interesting points about, was it Palantir in relation to this announcement of David Sacks being the crypto and AI czar?
Yeah, so I mean, anything or anybody that's close to Peter Thiel is going to be close to, one or more of his companies. And one of the ones that is most concerning to me in general is Palantir, which does a lot of AI and surveillance and especially military operations stuff. They're very heavily involved in a lot of U.S. military operations around the world. Yeah, Palantir came up especially at an event that I helped out at just last weekend, actually, which was called Investigating the Kill Cloud, run by Disruption Network Lab. And if you want to go see that, they live streamed all of the content, so you can go back and see all of the talks. And it has to do with like the use of AI and other technologies in warfare, especially drone warfare. And how, Lola was talking about it earlier about this kind of crazy idea that people have, including, Mark Andreessen, that this kind of technology is going to make it so much less risky for, members in the U.S. military to engage in warfare. So that's great. The problem is that it vastly increases the risk of anybody in the war zones that they're targeting, because actually the targeting is completely shit. Targeting decisions are increasingly being taken out of the hands of humans and being put into algorithms. And if there is a so-called human in the loop, this was a concept that was discussed quite a bit at the event, but it's essentially where they think that the decision of who to target, who to kill, can somehow become more ethical if you have like a human verifier in the process. But they don't usually define like what step, how long, how much are they actually evaluating the information that they're being fed. And so usually what happens is maybe they get 5 seconds, 20 seconds to like, for example, some of the technology, they're just checking whether the person they're about to target is male. So if you have a male sounding voice, if there's like some audio surveillance going on, and they can check that you're male, that means you're eligible to be killed, and they don't care if they maybe get it wrong. So it's that's the kind of decision making that's happening when you put a human in the loop. Is like, it's very, very basic stuff. And so for these people to say, yeah, this technology is so great because it means less risk for us, it means more risk for everybody else who's not a U.S. military member, because it means the chances of you getting accidentally killed and the willingness to kill people as collateral damage goes up. It does not decrease the risk at all for everybody else. It also makes people more able to engage in heinous acts of warfare without any consequences, because they can just say, oh, well, the AI, it's the AI's fault. They can just blame it on the technology that had bad data, that was corrupt or whatever. So yeah, I recommend looking at the content of that event, because it goes into all of these concepts and how this like remote automated warfare is very, very scary.
Another trusted third party, security hole, right? Oh, look, the AI did it. Anyways, are you gonna be able to give me the link for that in the show notes, so that I could put it in the show notes? Because that'd be absolutely awesome. I'm sure that people are gonna want to know about that. As you were explaining,
you could just watch Snowden. It's been happening for like 25 years.
But still, it's still good stuff. But the thing is
that we now call it unfathomably bullish.
It is. It's totally. It's so bullish. What are you talking about? And actually, on that point, right? So we're not making machines and drones to kill each other. We're still making machines and drones to kill humans. So both sides are making drones, right, to kill off other humans. But the drones aren't fighting each other. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't really like where any of this is going, to be honest. I like robotics. I do think AI is useful. I just think it's interesting that, one of the first things we always think about is just how to kill other people. This kind of goes back to my comment earlier on in the show that humans are predatory as one of our primary functions. Anyways, guys, I think that's going to do it for the Hopium. It's pretty grim. That was like maybe one of the grimmest Hopiums that we've ever done. But anyways, before we go, I want to give each of our guests, Lola and Janine, a chance to shill their links, tell people where they can go to find them and get their content. Lola, we will start with you, and then Janine. Go ahead, Lola.
Sure. So obviously I'm on Twitter and Nostr. I also run my own publication that's called The Rage. You can find that at therage.co, where we cover a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today, mostly around financial surveillance.
Sweet. Absolutely awesome. All of that will be in the show notes. Janine, where can people find you?
I am J9 Rome on Twitter, and I have a page, that one Privacy Girl, that has a lot of my bio stuff and email, and yeah, I'm not too active publicly lately, but yeah.
No, it's all good. We are going to put that in the show notes. This is going to wrap up our episode 115, right? Our episode 115 of Pleb Underground Weekly. Guys, don't forget to check us out on our audio-only platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. If you want to stream us sats, check us out on fountain.fm. Walton, you know the deal. Where does this end?
It ends with, I guess, fiat dying. Like 100K might be here, but I'm not taking my laser eyes off. Yeah.
Same here.
Fuckshitcoins.com. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
More toxic than the most toxic Bitcoin maxi ever.